We're ready for you, Your Majesty. 3, 2, 1.
This is...
The story of the kings and queens of England is more surprising than you might think. It's a fine drama, 1,000 years of tales of lust and betrayal, of heroism and cruelty, of mysteries, murders, tragedies, and triumphs.
My name is Charles II. I love the people and the people love me so much that they restored the English monarchy.
Hi everybody, so welcome back to the marvelous saga of Kings and Queens of England. So in the previous episode we had in 1658 Cromwell that died, and his son Richard that ruled for 8 months, and finally the Rump Parliament voted the end of his protectorate. So now we are on page 116 of your book, and the new episode starts in 1660, when the Parliament invited Charles II to return to his kingdom from his exile in France. This effectively ended the movement toward democracy, but the real power of the monarch was transferred to the Parliament. 2 political parties were founded, the Tories and the Whigs. It's now that the 2 parties system of Great Britain started. So the Tories were on the side of the king and the Church of England, of course, and mainly supported the landed gentry, so the landowners means rich people. The Whigs instead were supported by the urban middle class. The restoration of the monarchy was a relief for most of the English people because they were feeling oppressed by the strict rules of the Puritans. If you remember well, the Puritans, they were really severe on everything. They closed up the theaters and pubs and taverns. They stopped all celebration, including Easter and Christmas and everything. So after his life in France, Charles came back to England, but he learned French costumes and also French tastes. He was an admirer of Louis XIV, the Sun King, and he brought some aspect of French court life to England. Charles was called the Merry Monarch. He was really loved by his people, but this nickname was because he and his court were devoted to pleasure and frivolous things. He married the Portuguese princess Catherine of Braganza, but they never succeeded to have a child to provide an heir. But on his side, Charles had many mistresses and 12 illegitimated children. He was very tall and handsome. He loved to party, and during his reign, finally, race courses, concerts reopened. People started again to care about fashion, and he brought fashion also from France. So, for example, the use of the wigs for women and for men. Men were wearing wigs with long curly hair that they were looking like the Charles hairs. Also they were wearing elaborated clothes. They were cultivating their appearance, and they were talking about gossips. So instead of religious debate, they were talking about frivolous things. Finally, in 1660, Christmas was celebrated again. All the taverns reopened. Also, the theaters reopened, and in 1660, for the first time in England, we have the first woman on stage. So finally, actresses were allowed on stage. People were uninhibited. It was the time of the libertines, like in France. They were interested to live a life of pleasure and to express individual freedom from moral. The mentality also changed. There was a rejection of a strict morality coming from Puritanism, and there was a new interest in the real. The present world was more important than the destiny of the soul. Charles' second reign lasted 55 years, and his court was the most immoral in English history. And in this time, two big catastrophes happened. In 1665, there was an outbreak of bubonic plague, which killed more than 100,000 people. And a year later, in 1666, the so-called Great Fire of London destroyed most of the city in 5 days. The Puritans, of course, said that all this was God's punishment for the king's immorality, because, of course, according to the divine's right of monarchy, the king is somehow the representative of God in his kingdom. After the fire, Charles asked the architect Sir Christopher Wren to rebuild the old city with security rules, so with wide streets and wide squares, new buildings in stone and not in wood. So this was an occasion to start the English neoclassical style. And the masterpiece of the rebuilt of the City of London is the Cathedral of St. Paul. This rebuilding project was financed with the help of France, and in exchange, Charles signed the Treaty of Dover to join France at war against Holland in 1664. Secretly, also, he signed to restore Catholicism in England, and this change became effective after his death. Charles II died at the age of 54. Since Charles left no legitimate children, he was succeeded to the throne by his younger brother James, who became King James II. On his deathbed, Charles converted to Catholicism. The political changes of Charles II's reign. First of all, we have to remember in 1661 the Corporation Act. This was especially to limit the power of the Presbyterians, and it means that public offices were restricted to members of the Church of England. So it means that no Presbyterians or Roman Catholic could be part of public charges. This was wanted basically by the Parliament because the Parliament was less tolerant than the king. And the effective power was to the Parliament and not anymore to the king. In 1662, the Royal Society of London received the King's patronage. This Royal Society was an association of scientists and intellectuals, like Robert Boyle, John Evelyn, Samuel Pepys, Sir Christopher Wren, the architect who rebuilt London. Their motto was Nullius in Verba. It means on the world of no one. So this was to underline their independence from authority, that they were operating in the name of no one, but only because of science was what they were believing in. The function was to advise the government on problems which needed a scientific explanation. This reflected the rational attitude of this period. The home policy of Charles, actually the landowners, it means the nobles and the gentry together, took back the control of the society. a new elected parliament, the so-called Cavalier Parliament. It was the longest of English history. It lasted 18 years. Was a parliament that was originally enthusiastic about the king, but increasingly critical toward Charles with the time. In 1662, there was a new Act of Uniformity that imposed again the Book of Common Prayer with the new edition with only minor changes. And clergy who refused were forced to resign, so they could not be a part of the clergy anymore. This was to prevent a dissenting religion group from meeting. Subject had to swear an oath of allegiance to the king. In 1673, there was also the Tax Act that was saying that all public employees must conform to the Church of England. One last thing that Charles did is that he took revenge for his father's death. And even if when he came to the throne, he swore that he will forgive all the people that were part of the Republic, he took revenge of the regicides, and the bodies of the regicides, including the body of Cromwell, were exhumated from their tombs and hanged, like to give, even after their death, punishment to symbolize the power of the new king. Well, that's all. I hope that you enjoyed this new episode. Then all this, you find it on page 116. And so see you on the next episode. Goodbye.
I'm the king who brought back partying. King Charles, my daddy, lost his throne and kings were banned. They chopped off his head, then Ollie Cromwell ruled the land. Old Ollie wasn't jolly, he was glum and he was proud. Would be miserable as sin, only sinning's not allowed. When Ollie died, the people said, Charlie me hearty, get rid of his dull laws, come back, we'd rather party. This action's what they called the Monarchy Restoration, which naturally was followed by a huge celebration.
The King of England,
Good say,
no sin to sing.
okay.